All right, now let's get started. I would like to introduce Jan Thorpe. Jan has gathered with her family and several friends inside her Berkeley, California home where she lives with her husband, Larry. As most of you know, Jan's been a psychotherapist in private practice for 30 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she began writing Ancestors in 2007, inspired by her experience as a therapist working with her clients' dreams. And around the same time, Jan bought the Yoruba Jalid Festival Masquerade headdress that she will be talking about next. And after Jan speaks, Larry Thorpe will be reading I See You, a poem that Jan wrote about the headdress. Jan, take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to stick to my notes because we are time conservative here. But I do want to show you, I hope you can see this. And those of you who've read Ancestors, this is the mask that is prominent in the book. And when the first two female characters meet, Marimi and Rebecca, the mask is a symbol that really brings them together. There are many important symbols in the story, but this is one of the earliest ones that was a huge inspiration to me, particularly doing the research that focused on voodoo. And there's a lot of spirituality regarding voodoo in the book. Anybody, those of you who've read it know that. Okay, this is, as Jameson described, called a Yoruba Jalid Festival Masquerade headdress. And it's quite large, as you can see. It's all carved out of all one piece of wood. Interestingly enough, it is carved by the men for a Jalidi society that takes place in Nigeria, particularly the southwestern part of Nigeria, neighboring Benin and Togo. And it's used in the yearly festivals. It's carved by the men, and they are danced by the men in very elaborate costumes. The dancing is quite vigorous and usually an imitation of animals and birds and so forth. And these masks are carved in honor, and the dancing is in honor of the mothers. And by mothers, we're talking about the ancestors and the elder women in the communities. In the Jalidi festival, there is a chief priestess, and her job or her function is the guardian of the shrine. And she is the only person allowed in the shrine. There's also a head chief priest, and his job is the guardian of the headdresses and the costumes that are performed during the dancing or in the dancing. And they're quite prescribed, and it takes years to learn to do these dances. The festivals are very elaborate affairs, accompanied by singing, drumming, and the dancing. And as I say, they're in honor of the mothers. And the dancing is quite stylized. There's a saying among the Yoruba people that the eyes that have seen Jalidi have seen the ultimate spectacle, which I think must be absolutely true, because these headdresses are quite heavy and they're carried on top of the heads. And I honestly don't know quite how the men keep them on, but I do understand they have handlers sometimes that keep them upright. This particular mask is quite old, and it has a very typical feature is the female face below, and she's quite reposed and interesting. Her eyes are almond shaped, her large nostrils, her full lips, and interestingly, the ears, hope you can see this, are shaped like question marks, which I find quite fascinating. These masks are not intended to be peaceful. On top is a very dynamic tableau. And as you can see, there's a snake that coils around her, and the teeth of the snake, the jaws of the snake are clamped down on the tail of the alligator, or the crocodiles. Sorry, they're crocodiles. Two crocodiles are in front, and their mouths are clamped down on the snake. So it's a kind of detente. And crocodiles are seen by the Nigerian people, the Yoruba people, as creatures that are half in the water, half out of the water, which represents the spiritual world, the world of the ancestors, and the living world. And it's considered to be liminal space. when I talked to my husband, Larry Thorpe, and all of you know who Larry is, he said, oh, you should write a poem. That will more express your feelings about this mask that is really a sacred object. And I said, oh no, I'm not going to write a poem about it. And then I wrote a poem about it. So I said to Larry, and you, Larry, are going to read it. Where is Larry? All right. You come sit.
The name of the poem is I See You. I see you. You do not see me. Born of ancient Sheba, I am older than my once living tree. Vacant eyes watch and wait for fire, evaporating all remnant of the spirit through me who once spoke. Now I am worn on white static walls. I dwell in the shade of rooms where imposters come and go, staring at the beauty queen preening, no longer of consequence. Beware the lessons of shutting down all that matters, burrowing with primeval taproots, hungry to eat the food in rotting cypress, graveyards of the lost divine. Thank you.
Wow. That is amazing. Both the headdress and that poem, Jan. Thank you very much. Now, Jan is going to talk with her editor, Carol Burbank. Jan has worked with Carol for 3 years. And Carol is a writer, writing mentor, editor, an educator, and founder of Story Weaving Coaching and Consulting. She is proud to have worked on Ancestors with Jan C. Thorpe, whose focused, playful, and character-driven thrillers bring something new to the popular genre. Carol currently teaches at Pacifica Graduate Institute and at the Story Weaving Retreat Center in Fort Washington, Maryland. To learn more about Carol's background and work, go to www.storyweaving.com. Jan and Carol, I look forward to hearing about what it's like to work together. Take it away.
Hi, Jan. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Let me start by saying that before I found you, when I finished Ancestors, or the first manuscript or draft of it, in about 2014. I thought it was done. This is good. Off we go. Little did I know I needed a professional editor, but I was convinced that's what I needed. And therefore I began working with several editors, first one, then another one. And it was not a good experience. And I had pretty much given up until Larry actually stuck your picture under my nose. You know, he printed it out, and there you were. And I saw that you taught at Pacifica, so I thought, okay, I'll give her a try. So I think that was almost 4 years ago when we. And I say, thank heavens for you.
Back at you, Jan. You know, when I first read the draft of Ancestors that you sent me, I just thought, wow, this could be a great book. And the work that you put into this book and the courage that you've had in reaching for excellence and great storytelling that ties in with your vision has been inspiring to me as well. And I think that that's what's going to make this a book that readers are going to love.
Well, I thank you for that. And, you know, what I realize is with you and I, that we've gotten to know each other quite well. You know, our sessions together, which we have about every 2 weeks, I mean, we exchange stories, and your instinct for what needs to be improved or worked on, or, you know, whatever. I mean, I totally trust it. And therefore, when you it needs a little work, I know it needs a little work. Right now, we're in the 5th book. And I was thinking of that chapter. We're in chapter 21, which is a pivotal chapter. And yet you said, oh yeah, but you know, I'm using some of the same characters in all the books. And you said, oh, this is the point where Gertrude, you know, figures everything out. She's got something up her sleeve. But you mentioned that, but I know what's going to happen. And I said, no, you don't know. But yeah, you're right. You know what's going to happen.
It's really hard. I really want to say it's hard for authors to hear, especially driven and brave authors like Jan, to hear that what they've set up isn't quite working. Because in your head as an author, you know exactly why someone says something or why someone does something. And it feels like it's in the imaginal realm. It feels real to the author. And so it takes a lot of willingness to listen and a real sense of trust, and also I think a sense that an understanding of writing, to really say, oh, so this isn't working. What's wrong? And I want to tell you all, this book, which is about narcissists and other animals, predators, it's quite a remarkable story, very timely, incredibly well researched. But what Jan did with that chapter totally transforms this book into a whole other level that's going to surprise readers who keep returning to the ancestors group of people in the ancestors book, kind of like we always return to authors like Louise Penny, always wanting to know about her characters. But what you did, Jan, with that chapter, I mean, it was, I think, the fourth time I said, well, Jan, I know you're working on this, but I'm just not getting it. And you said, well, I figured it out. And she totally figured it out. And it blew my mind. It was I was so happy. And it's such a typical Jan solution, which is why I'm a writing mentor and not just a grammarian editor. You know, I want my authors to find their own solutions, not to find a conventional solution or my solution. And that's what I love about working with you, Jan.
Well, that's what I love about working with you. Because you trust me, and you know, that encouragement that I know you can do this. You know, yes, I can, but you leave it up to me. And you know, and I'm one of those writers where people say, well, when do you have time to write? Well, I don't actually. But what I do is I'm writing all the time in my head, even when I'm cleaning the kitchen. Yeah. I'm thinking, okay, how's it going to go? How am I going to do this? Or I wake up at 3, and that solution came to me at 3 in the morning. Just so you know.
And the other cool thing about how you puzzle things through, Jan, that I want to share is that one of the things that's really fun for me as your editor is that in Ancestors, for example, there's a really interesting liminal space that you set up between the spirit, dreams, healing with a therapist, and the autonomy of a person, which is Moremi, the main character, who's discovering her autonomy in the face of traditional thriller odds, right? It's a complex and very, very smart way of telling a story, because at the end of the book, which I won't tell you the ending, but I've read this book. I must have read it 10 times. I went through it the first time, and then the second, and then I did another. I mean, I've read this book a million times, and every single time I read this book, I weep at the last chapter, which is saying a lot for someone who reads way too many books in a given week. But I just love the last chapter. And right before tonight, I was looking at the book again, and I was just kind of thumbing through and opening it at random. And I thought, no, I have to read that last chapter again. And I just thought, oh, this is so wise. I mean, I don't think Jan fashions herself as Gertrude, but I'm a big fan of the wisdom that you bring to these books, because it's not just a, hey, we're gonna get through this adventure. It's no James Bond popcorn. It's deep and it's true, and it feels truly character driven and psychologically nuanced. And that's what is so exciting about this book, because it's really for smart readers, not just readers that want to sit on the beach and forget what they've read.
Well, thank you, Carol, because, when we first spoke, I said, I've chosen this genre, sort of, the thriller genre, but I wanted to write an intelligent psychological thriller. So it had to have more depth than a lot of thrillers do. And I read a lot of thrillers, and there are a lot that do have depth. I don't say they don't, but yeah. And you got that about me. And I was so grateful that at least someone gets what I'm trying to hear.
Well, that's why it's such a lonely process writing a book, because we can never write a book once. Jan, I think you must have written this book since 2007, 15 times.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've been over.
Now I want to encourage all of you to take it to your book groups, because this is the kind of book that book groups can really bite into, and it won't bite back like the crocodile or the snake. It'll just add to the excitement of it. And it's also incredibly well researched. I mean, that's one of the challenges I think Jan has, which is that I'll just talk to you about it. You research and you go, maybe I should do more research. But when you let go of the research, it integrates seamlessly into the book, which is, it's a powerful force behind the thriller.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we probably have to move on.
Yay. Well, and as a writer, I'll just say it is such a gift to find a fantastic editor who allows you to find your own solutions to your book. So I'm so glad you found each other. That's fantastic. Karen Sketch, Jan's sister-in-law, designed Ancestors' gorgeous cover, as well as the covers for Jan's other soon-to-be-published novels, Ghost, Motherboard, and Looters. Karen is a graphic designer who has found a niche in Santa Barbara, helping authors self-publish their books. And with attention to detail inside and out, Karen loves nothing better than to turn a manuscript into a physical book. And now Jan and Karen will talk about their process of working together. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you, Jameson. Yes, attention to detail. Well, did you say 2007 was when you sent John and I a manuscript?
I think it was.
So I knew there was a cover involved, but so it's been brewing, for a while. But when she asked me about a year ago, we had to talk about the mask and how the mask really wasn't the focus of the book. As you said, it's about two women. It's not about Africa. So we put the mask aside, and I did have a vision of, because I love, thrillers and mysteries, and it's a bonus if they're spiritual and full of, symbology. So my idea was to have a thing, but always have a pattern around the thing that we could hide little symbols in. And so when we talked about what would be the thing for Ancestors, Jan said, how about a snake in a jar? And I said, yeah. And that was the beginning of, setting up. This is a designer's dream, because there's more than one book and it's a series. So, another thing about this project was, a saturated palette we could use, and I wanted them to have a family look. So when we got the snake in the jar, then we started playing around with symbols all around it. And we talk about once a week. So I'd say, I need something for this corner. And she'd say, okay, what about, the pearls?
Oh, we put all kinds of things.
We put everything in.
We tried a mirror for a long time. We wanted a mirror, but it didn't work.
And we realized that when we put the mongoose in, hidden in the kelp, we realized that less was more. Yeah. So we started taking things out, because the snake in the jar was so there. So perfect.
I know.
and we didn't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
And it was Jan's idea to make the eye green, you know?
Was
So,
it? I thought it was your idea.
oh, I can't remember. I thought it was
No,
yours.
Your idea. You said a green eye. I said, yeah.
So
That's how we work.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we're having a lot of fun. And also to be able to work on, the books simultaneously too. So I was crazy about doing at least 3 or 4 at one time.
Yeah. So we
they-
did. We did.
They had a similar look and feel. So we did
Ghost.
Ancestors, Ghost.
Yeah. And we had ghosts with the bear rug. That took a long time.
Right.
With the face coming through, because that's the ghost.
Right.
And yeah, it was, and then we put a lot of things around, but then we took them away too.
Motherboard.
Yeah, then we did motherboard, right?
Motherboard is a skull of Geronimo.
Geronimo.
And all the little hidden symbols are all
And-
around that.
And helicopters coming out of his eyes. That was really inspired. And yeah, it was whether one helicopter out of one eye. No, got to be 2 helicopters coming out of both eyes.
So I love anything printed that has surprises. Then I was working on automotive books, that's why you have centerfold, because you have a break. And so when Jan wanted the little animals in, each chapter, it was like, but, just for us, it's a fun thing. And I hope it's fun for everybody else. But, we made, I had to immerse myself in mongooses. So that's what's really cool about some of this stuff. The texture on the snake on Ancestors is really fish scales, because I wanted a combination of snake and fish for Mami Wata. Symbology.
And the kelp for the water. We needed water. We knew it was watery in the background.
So what else?
Okay, I think we're good. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I love the covers. I think y'all are a fantastic team. Okay, now I have the pleasure of introducing Cork Marcheski, who will be interviewing Jan about Ancestors and her writing life. And when Jan asked Cork how he wanted to be introduced, here's what he said, and I quote, 4 options. Number 1, nice guy, good cook, genius. Number 2, fine artist, art historian, musician, and inventor of cheese-flavored dog food. Number 3, Bay Area native, sculptor, musician, lecturer, and teacher of very bad habits. He is represented in major collections around the world. His focaccia is better than yours. And number 4, Cork is well known as a very quotable interviewer. Here are a few of his most repeated quotes. What's that smell? Is brown a color? And you can't be in the middle at a table for 2. Welcome, Cork.
Hi, Jan.
Hi.
How's it going?
Doing well.
Okay.
We're all here. The video's working.
Well, as we talked about earlier, there's a couple of things that you've done in the book that I found visually really transformative. And read a couple of little quotes here, and I'd like to have you address them. Why now? Why can't you just leave me alone and let me have some peace? Haven't I done everything I could do to appease her? I gave her the bright pink bead necklace and a 6-pack of Coca-Cola. I don't know what she wants. So I really would like a little information on what this type of gift or offering specifically would be.
Mami Wata is a water spirit. She requires altars, and on the altar you give her gifts, and she loves jewelry. She loves mirrors. She loves perfume. She loves Coca-Cola. She loves snakes, hence snake in the jar.
Right.
And so what Marimi is doing in that opening piece right there is she knows that now that she's living in America for 10 years, she's disconnected herself from being a follower of Mummy. And that's something you really cannot do. And she knows that Mummy is coming with a message to her. And she thinks she has an altar to Mummy. She keeps secret in the basement. And those of you who read the book know it's down in the basement. Oh, and her husband doesn't know about it, presumably, even though he does. And so that's what that's about. She's singing, why now? Why now? But she knows why now. She knows something's wrong and that this Mummy is coming with a message, and it's always a cryptic message. It's never telling her really what's what. It's just, it's going to be an ambivalent message. Like the mask, everything is to be figured out by the person themselves. In that sense, the whole, all of the worldview of voodoo is very much like that nothing is black and white. It's all completely melded between the spiritual world and the living world. And we're only here for a brief period of time. And it's the message for us from the ancestral world is always to sort of figure it out. It's usually a message of it's like a poem. It's like a koan. It's never specific. So Marimi's sort of dreads it. She dreads it, but she knows what's coming. That's kind of the idea.
Okay.
For offerings.
Now, this one was very personal to me simply because I'm very involved in music. In the same scene, the drumming intensified and now was infused with soft harmonicas wafting over a deep and slow bass saxophone. Now, harmonicas is plural. Harmonicas normally are marine band harmonicas, which are never played together.
Right.
So you have painted a picture of a group of chromatic harmonicas, which have been written for by great classical composers. It can be played like any other instrument. And then you have picked the bass saxophone, a saxophone which most people do not even know exists. And when they see one, it looks like a toy because it's so large. It has wheels on the end, and you stand on a box to get the entire thing off the ground so you can pay it. And then the sound can be that of a growling animal, a big animal. We're not talking dogs and cats, a big animal. So if any clarification or just, I want to hear it. I'd buy that record.
Yeah. Well, explanation, yes. I wanted in my mind, what I heard in my mind was a sound. It wasn't music particularly, it was a sound that was otherworldly. So I picked the bass sax. Yeah, I'll go with that. And I just love the sound of harmonicas. So I picked the harmonicas and imagine all that together. What would that sound like? And here she is, in the middle of the night, in her nightgown, standing on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. So I wanted to create an otherworldly context for what's going to happen, what's going to follow. Of course, it turns out it's a dream, but you're not supposed to know that. And I think the reader doesn't, but where is she? What's she doing? Here in the middle of the night under a full moon, and it's windy and it's hot. What's she doing in her nightgown? Is she going to jump in the ocean? Yes, because Mummy comes. So anyway, the music that or the sound that you're mentioning just came to me. And I thought, I wonder what that would sound like. And like you, I don't really know.
Yeah. But it would be really good to find out.
It would be good to find out.
I'll have Larry get his comb and wax paper and we'll
There
give
you
it
go.
a try.
There you go. And we can see what we can come up with.
So you're heading for chapter 2. Please take my hand. I give it to you as a gesture of friendship and love and of faith freely given. I give you my hand and welcome you into my dream. Wonder Woman, number 167. So how about your relationship with Wonder Woman?
Well, I think Wonder Woman is fascinating, and she's, an iconic, American symbol. And I came across that quote, and I just loved it. And I hadn't known, that was a Wonder Woman. I mean, I hadn't known it was out there. And when I found it, because when I looked for the quotes, again, it's kind of like the music. I just find a quote that I like, and that'll work. And that's what happened. And I found that one, and right away I loved it and had to put it in.
Well, I found something that I really enjoyed about the entire book was that I thought from the very beginning, it tested your practice credulity. And I could see where, depending on what you have that you bring to the book, allows you to say, is someone seeing this a dream or somebody else there and ready to go?
Yeah.
And I mean, was that an intention or did it just develop itself?
No, it's an intention. I really do, because I work so much with dreams, and Jameson knows this. She's quite a dreamer. So we've talked a lot about, where is reality? And I think a lot of times it's more in the dreaming mind than it is in the waking mind. And so, all my books had to do with that, again, liminal space between dreaming and waking, and what's real and what isn't real. And of course, I think, Jameson, you and I agree, what's most real is in our dreams. And answers to things come through dreams that don't come through in logical trying to figure things out. So everything I write about is sort of taking that into consideration.
Okay. So just 4 characters that I'd like you just to give me a little hit on, because I have met them within the context of the book. And I would like to hear if the people that I met were actually the people that you wrote about. So let's start with Rebecca.
Yeah, Rebecca. Well, I tried very hard not to make Rebecca autobiographical, because of course she is a little bit. One cannot get away from that. However, she's divorced. I'm not divorced. She married someone who can cook. And he likes to sing to the dogs while he cooks. So, I made her as different as I could, but for sure, Rebecca has parts of me in her, again, and, I think I see her as being quite feisty, and I see myself that way too. So, and direct, but also someone who understands dreams. And when she meets Marimi, there's that connection between these two women who come from entirely different cultures, which was something I was very interested in telling a story about.
So let's move on to Peter.
Peter was really interesting for me because in the beginning, he was quite evil and evil husband. But as I was writing about him, I discovered that I liked him more than I thought, in the sense that I began to feel for him and for his wrongness, that he'd made a lot of wrong decisions, but he was very much in love with his wife, but he allowed really stupid principles to take over, and his intentions were wrong. But who he is deep down as a child. I try to bring in bits and pieces of his childhood and how he was treated by his parents. And so, of course, that's quite psychological. But in the end, I tried to make him a very sympathetic character.
And how about Richard?
Well, Richard's based on Larry. He's a know-it-all. And we've been married. We have a lot of fun together. And, one of the, when Larry first became really interested, oh, she's writing this book and she keeps doing it. She stays at it. And Larry and I were on a vacation up on Vancouver Island. And we were sitting out on a deck in the evening, and I just said, what do you think about voodoo? And he said, voodoo. And he's eating his cracker, chomping on his cracker, sipping his wine and looking out, and he starts talking about voodoo. And I start writing it down. And then fast forward about 9 months later, we're up at our cabin at Tahoe. He's reading that chapter, and he said, oh, this is brilliant.
Perfect specimen of the male animal, right?
But he'd forgotten those were his words. He thought I'd written. Where'd you learn all that? I said, you.
Well, last name I'll throw at you is Hugo.
Yeah, Hugo really is a product of purely my imagination. And sometimes I wonder where he came from because, I've never known anyone like Hugo. So truly he came out of my imagination, but I grew to like him too. So all I can say is, for all of Hugo's, wrong turns in life, he was unraveling. Here he is, a hired assassin. He's getting very tired of what he's doing. And he just wants to escape and get down to Rio and, dance the tango with women. Yeah, I mean, he's tired, but he comes to, I think, a poetic end when he puts the house on fire. He thinks he's going to escape, but then he cannot. So I think his ending was appropriate.
Okay. The roped pot.
The rope pot is there was a dig in Nigeria, I believe in 1968, an uncovering of a massive amounts of the ironwork that the ancestors had done, and it's just apparently an absolutely beautiful object. I don't quite know which museum it is. I hope it's in Africa. I hope it's in Nigeria. Now, I'm not sure. But I looked at all the photographs of the roped pot, and there's something very mesmerizing about it. It's so beautiful. And it's hard to understand how that kind of craftsmanship could have been done by hand. And it had to have been, it's got to be, at least 100 years old. So I put it in. I just wanted it somehow to use it in the book.
Yeah, it was also a really great image.
Yeah, it is. It is gorgeous.
And just the title of the book and so much of the book, Ancestors. And we're here in America, and our relationship to ancestors is so far from these ancestors. And as I read it, I found much more continuity for the ancestors that were being described and that we were living with in the story versus the culture that is reading this book, which it's a corrupt culture in terms of things like ancestors, spirituality,
Right.
Humanness, kindness, etc. So do you want to just address a little bit about that disparity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's missing in American culture. I really do. And I think, again, our very superficial, sort of Halloween image of what voodoo is when I started doing research into it and discovering what it's really about, it's a worldview that's quite stunning and quite amazing, and has everything to do with the past and the now, and listening to the wisdom of the ancestors. And and again, I thought I got to write about that. I got to bring it in, and I myself think that we miss out by not understanding this more in our culture. And you think about the festivals, the Jalidi festival every year, where the men dance in honor of the mothers, the honoring of that feminine wisdom. Then I think we missed out on that too. I really do. So I wanted to write about it and make it seem real to people.
They did a good job.
Thank you.
Massive suspension of frontal lobe activity. So that was right around, let me see, I can actually,
Did Gertrude say that?
let me see.
I think so.
Voodoo is a very old and practiced.
Oh, no, Larry
form.
said it. That's where I got that.
Okay, voodoo is a very old and practiced form of disassociation. Now we're getting close to your territory. It's a form of massive suspension of frontal lobe activity.
Well, Larry's been interested in dissociation for a long, long time. So, Larry brought it right in. I thought, that's good. That's good. Because it is. In order to understand what spiritual possession is, you can't use your logic brain. It's got to go. It's got to go.
The mason jar, and I think it's important that it's a mason jar because we have such, I think, comfortable relationship with mason jars.
Yes.
They were there before I was born. I lived in the Midwest. They were everywhere.
Right.
We use them to this day in our kitchen. And there is a very powerful something in this mason jar.
Yes.
And I'm interested in your sculptural concept of the snake in the jar and the power the snake has in the jar because of its effect.
Yeah. Well, they in the story, of course, there is a jar, a mason jar with a snake in it, and if you saw it in somewhere in a store or something, oh, it's just a static object with a snake in there. Is it alive or isn't it? But when it's a symbolic object imbued with certain powers, and in the book, the power, by the way, is in the basement, in that altar, and it's in that jar. And remember, that's the undoing of Hugo, because he sees it, and for some reason he has a reaction to it, and he throws it, and that's what brings the housekeeper down, and then he's, it's the ending, and it's sort of, behind the idea of that is the snake is real, of course,
Right.
and kept in that jar is all of that energy that is burst out because he flings it and breaks it, and out it comes, and that's the end
Then I
of
think
him.
sort of this American culture and other cultures who do believe the men that looked into this jar, it was not possible for them to think it was anything more than a rubber snake.
Right.
So the power didn't even exist as a potential.
Right.
And how about the desecration of the altar?
Yeah, that was an inspired moment, to tell you the truth, because I thought, okay, Peter he's going to go down there. He's going to go down. He's going to open it up. He's going to look at it. He knows that she's not disconnected completely from her origins. She's just not. He wants her to, but she's not. And he wants to do something that will somehow erase that altar, but he can't. And then he cuts himself, And it's like, self-cutting. It's soothing for him to do that because he cannot stand the fact that she keeps that altar, but he can't stop her from doing it. And he knows it. And he does understand the power of the voodoo. He understands it. He had that experience as a kid. He knows. And he's the one who's turned away from his culture. And of course, it's the ending of him. It's the undoing of him. Always has been the undoing of him. I think we're at time.
We're at time. Okay. Well, then it's really an amazing story.
Thank you, Cork. Those were great questions. I really enjoyed that. So before we get to our Q&A, I'm going to read a short scene for chapter 12 in Ancestors. And this is beginning on page 76. And to give you a little context, Morimi is in her second therapy session with Rebecca. And Morimi is wrestling with embracing her new American culture, her secret riddled marriage, and her haunted memories and dreams about an unsettled past. Their session began with a long silence. And then Morimi leaned forward and said, "I want to tell you a dream I had last night." "Ah, at last, she's letting me in." Rebecca picked up her pen and yellow pad to record the dream. Here we go. "It's daytime and I'm walking down a dirt road. The landscape is familiar. I'm near my home in Nigeria, and yet somehow I feel like I'm lost. A strange feeling to know where you are and feel lost at the same time. I start to panic a little as the landscape around me begins to shift. A cloud blocks the sun and everything is in shadow. The more I sense I know my way home, the more things become unfamiliar. I realize I am lost. The warmth of the sun is gone, and a chill wind begins to blow. A flock of birds in a V shape fly overhead. I look up and recognize they are ospreys. Their long bodies glide seamlessly, occasionally waving their great wings. I'm thrilled to see them, but as they fly north and fade out of sight, I crumple down in the road, crying uncontrollably. The birds are gone. They know exactly where they are going as they migrate to their winter habitat. I'm lost, but I don't know why. Then I see something approaching me very far away. It's not human. It's flapping gigantic wings. And as it comes into view, I see it's an ostrich, a female. She's preening her neck back and forth at me. She must be 8 feet tall. Her big eyes and long lashes are comical. I laugh. She comes right up to me and pokes her beak in my pocket. She must expect that I have food for her, but I don't. I become angry and start shouting at her. Morimi stopped and said nothing, thoughtful. Was that it? Rebecca looked up from her writing. Yes, I woke up. All right, let's move on to some questions. I know we're a little over time, so we'll try to get through these quickly. Jan from Elizabeth, are there plans to further explore Rebecca's dream and her ancestors in upcoming books in the series?
Morimi is not a character in any of the following books. The characters who are repeated are Richard and Rebecca, Gertrude, Bear, and the two chows.
Okay, do we explore Rebecca's dream from ancestors in the future?
No, I don't. Okay. No.
Okay. This question is from Heather Pegas. When a trusted reader or editor tells you once or several times that something isn't getting across, what is your process for making your vision clear? What do you do, and do you feel there are any compromises you've had to make?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. To understand it, what is my process? Well, again, as I said, Carol, I really trust Carol's instincts when she says this isn't quite coming across clearly to me, or I don't understand it or something. She comes from the reader's point of view. But my process, I usually stick with my own vision of whatever it is I want, but I'll rework it over and over. I find that editing I used to think it was difficult, but now I don't mind editing. I think good writers have to edit, 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 and edit.
Very true. Well, thank you all for attending Jan's book launch tonight. Remember to keep your eye out for a signed copy of her book coming in the mail, as well as your Gertrude Owl pin. And don't forget to post your reviews on Amazon. And you can go to jancthorpe.com to purchase her book and to see her other upcoming books. And last but not least, congratulations, Jan. I know how much work this takes, and birthing your book into the world has been a long road, but we're all grateful for you for this extraordinary story.
Thank you.
Cheers.